Hello and welcome to this week's Ask Me Anything. And this week I want to answer a question for Katya von Crow. Hello, Katya. Welcome to the group. Um, and the question I'm going to answer, even, it's very hot here in Ireland. I'm very pink. The brain's not functioning properly. The question I want to answer is, how can organisations align diversity and inclusion strategies with broader business objectives while ensuring they remain authentic and impactful? And actually, what I want to do is take this up a level because diversity and inclusion initiatives great, but for many of you, you might be working in maternity return to workers or wellness initiatives or menopause initiatives or any project area where being able to align that area to broader business objectives will be more likely to win you support. And for all of us, I think it's important that that doesn't come at the expense of feeling authentic and having impact. So I'm going to share with you a framework you can use to help position your work so that the value of it is better understood. And the way you do that is precisely by aligning to broader business objectives. And this doesn't require you to do anything different with the work you would be doing. It requires you to make a language bridge, a positioning bridge to the decision maker or the stakeholder that you are pitching or positioning that work to, whether it's diversity and inclusion or any other kind of project or any other request or pitch, including pay rise, pay negotiation, promotion, small business pitch of any description, or project pitch or resource request even. So this is a phenomenal model. I designed it myself. I say I designed it. I drew on my experience of being a boardroom decision maker, because when you get into business decision making in any context, usually somewhere there will be a backstop of a finance person or a senior leader who is either directly or indirectly endorsing or approving investments in projects, initiatives, people, pay rises, whatever. Learning to understand their world and speak their language is how you get the yes to those initiatives. So I want to give you this framework, the four pillars of value. And any of you who have downloaded my ebook, Get the Yes, it's called, the Get the Yes ebook, may be familiar with this, but I'll talk you through it. It will be helpful for you to experience it this way on video as opposed to just reading it. But if you would also like to read it and use it as a reference, we will drop the link to the Get the Yes ebook below this video and you can download your own copy. So to get the yes, you need to align your initiative, whatever it may be, to the objectives of the business. How do you do that if you're not sure what the objectives are? Well, there are four areas that consistently remain important across the business world. This even goes for individual buying decisions, actually, but this language is particularly relevant to business. So those four areas are how I make money through this initiative, how I save money through this initiative, how I avoid or mitigate risk through this initiative, or how I somehow support or deliver on a pet project of my decision maker or one of my decision makers' influential stakeholders. So let's take the example of diversity and inclusion. How does that make money? That one's slightly harder, although I would suggest that there are trends around diversity and inclusion that are rich seams of commercial opportunity. And let me just say, many of us working in these kind of spaces are heart-led. We're not in it to make companies money or save them money. We're in it to have meaningful impact on the people in those organizations. Great. And sadly, the world we live in is such that if you can't justify how it's going to make or save money, you are less likely to get the yes. Particularly right now, when we are in a bit of a phase of cost cutting and cost saving and battening down the hatches for difficult economic backdrops. So being able to articulate how what you do makes an organization money, great. Particularly right now, being able to articulate how you save an organization money is very powerful. So this might look or sound like organizations that have good diversity and inclusiveness or inclusion practices and programs in place typically see greater talent retention, stronger employer brands, less sickness absence, less tribunals, for example, and organizations with diverse senior leadership teams typically outperform those that have less diverse leadership teams. So there's loads of great evidence on that. You only have to ask ChatGPT or Claude, and it will probably give you great facts and stats that allow you to convert the kind of heart-led, meaningful impact that you intend to have, your mission stuff, into more commercially sharp language. So make money, save money. Your third piece, mitigate risk. In the case of diversity and inclusion, the argument is softer here because the US is leading a charge away from diversity and inclusion as a program. However, it is fair to say that where perceived or evidenceable biases or prejudice or inequalities are in place in an organisation, there is much greater risk of tribunal, legal cases, employment law cases, and things like that. So the risk mitigation argument, taking diversity and inclusion as the case study, is really strong around that area, in spite of it becoming a sort of dirty word in corporate America because of the political agenda there. I guess you might be watching this video 3 years from now when that's less relevant. But just to acknowledge it, right? But there is still a really strong risk-based case for having solid diversity and inclusion practices. And look, if that language has become challenging because of the political backdrop in America, then maybe it's about having inclusivity and wellness and people-centered or cultural, you might reposition it as cultural initiatives to support alignment and high performance through wellness and integration, right? Whatever words feel right, and you do need to be tapped into the culture and mission of the organization you're seeking to align with. They might be really quite progressive and enlightened and knowing that they have to continue doing these things but position them slightly differently in terms of the political pressures, or they might be totally not enlightened and progressive around these things and just have to tick a box around corporate wellness. Who knows? You need to really go in with curiosity to understand your decision-making stakeholders in order to position your work around their objectives. And you may choose not to work with some organizations if you feel that there isn't alignment there, but we all have to pay the bills, right? So sometimes you have to kind of accept the rough with the smooth there. So making the case that by commencing this project or doing this work, or as you're pitching this initiative, making the case for the degree of risk it mitigates for an organization. And that can be legal risk, it can be regulatory risk, it can also be personal risk, as in what are the consequences for a senior individual to be seen as not supporting this. So risk can be kind of hard risk and soft risk. And then finally, pet project. Sometimes there is someone in an organization who really wants to make something happen, and there may not be dedicated budgets, or there may not be a culture that's hugely supportive of it. But if that person is influential or senior enough that they have a burning desire to do something, they're going to make it happen, whatever about the rest of the organization. So if you can connect to or flush out or find that pet project, that strategic initiative that isn't quite getting over the line, or that strategic desire that has currently a gap around it, then you can pitch your initiative into that. And that might be, we want to win an Investors in People award and we have to tick the diversity and inclusion box, or we truly want to attract a more diverse candidate pool and I will not rest until we have better representation across our senior leadership. Great, you can align around that. So to recap, how does this initiative make money? How does it save money? How does it help mitigate risk? Or how does it align or support a key project, a key desire for someone influential within the organisation or perhaps in the strategic plan of the organisation? If you have those things in mind when you are pitching initiatives or yourself, as in, I'd like that more senior role. I know that these things are important. I've got these ideas and I've got this energy to kind of work in this space, but it's going to make this much money and I'm just asking for a little pay rise because it's going to generate so much more income or it's going to save all this money or whatever it might be. You are much more likely to get the yes. Make money, save money, risk, pet project. Think about those things. We'll drop the Get the Yes ebook beneath this video and let us know what you think. How does it feel? How does it feel to use that sharp-edged commercial thinking and language if you know it's the way to get your meaningful impact seen and heard and understood? And if the counter to that is, I don't like the idea of using that commercial language, but that means I never get the yes and I never get to have that impact. Well, isn't it better to learn to speak the language of your decision maker? Because everything after that is down to you to be in that alignment, to have that impact and to be able to make that change in the world. But sometimes we have to do a bit of a dance with the devil, speak the corporate commercial language in order to get through the door and make those things happen. I really hope that's helpful, Katya. I welcome your feedback and anyone else. Please let me know what you think of this. It's always really interesting when we're in this education space around learning to speak the language of big business decision makers in particular, because often it's not a space that we feel we want to be in when we're heart-led. But remember that being in that space is how you get to have that heart-led impact. So feedback, please. And if you have a question, drop it to us. And I will aim to give you an Ask Me Anything response at some point in the coming weeks. And anyone who has their directly posted question answered also receives a copy of my 100 Ways to Raise Your Vibration. So post away and I'll see you again soon.